Hi, today we're going to be talking about how to properly change the strings on your classical guitar. I've got a guitar here that the strings have, one string is broken, another string broke recently. Rather than just changing them one at a time, it's been a while since they've been changed. It's time to change them. First thing I'm going to do is cut away the strings that are on here. Now I know some people will say don't bother doing that. I use a little wire clipper here. They'll say don't cut them all off at once because that can cause problems. But the fact is that you're not going to have the strings off long enough and the guitar out of tension long enough for it to be a problem. So I just cut them off like that. Next thing I do is I remove them from the saddle area. And on a classical, it's just essentially pushing the strings back through and getting them off. While I have the strings off, I always like to wipe everything down, get all the dust and dirt out from the little crevices, and also from under on top of the guitar here where it can't get under the strings very often. I just wipe it off with a clean cloth, nothing on it. If it's particularly filthy, I might put a little something on here, but not generally anything. It's generally just wipe it off, just wipe the fingerprints and stuff off. Okay. Next, I want to take the strings off from the headstock area. Same sort of thing, just take the string, push it back through the hole, and then pull the string off. Okay, now all the strings are off. I don't have any strings anywhere on the guitar. While I have them off like this, there are a couple things I like to do. One thing I like to do is I like to clean up the frets. Now, this fingerboard is relatively clean. There's a little bit of dirt here, not a whole lot, but mostly what I've got here is the frets. This guitar has not been played a lot, so the frets are a little tarnished. Some of the things I'll do to remove this tarnish, and it's not, you don't have to remove it, but I think it feels nicer under the fingers when they touch the frets and when they touch the strings. With the frets nice and polished and slick, it'll just have a faster feel and just feel better for your hands. So what I use is either I'll use a little bit of 4-0 steel wool, and when I say 4-0, that's the designation for how fine it is. It is very, very, very fine. Just look for 4-0, nothing coarser than that, not 3-0, not 2-0. 4-0 works very nicely, and I'll take that and I'll just rub over the fret just like this, and it'll polish up the fret real nicely. And I always go lengthwise over the fret because if you do any bending or anything, you would actually feel that. And it polishes up the fret very nicely, gives it a nice shine. You can see this one's a little shinier. Another thing you can use that's even less aggressive than the 4-0 steel wool is one of these little nail buffers. And on side 2, which is the smooth nail side, you can just take it and just go over it again, just like that. Now you will see that I'm scratching at the fingerboard a little bit, and this is, some guys are like, you should never do this because you're going to remove so much wood from the fingerboard. Honestly, I don't think I do this but maybe 4, 5, 6 times maybe over the course of the guitar's life. I'm not doing this every week, not even doing this once a year necessarily. And if the guitar is being played regularly, you don't have to do this at all. You don't have to polish up these frets because the strings themselves, being played over the frets, tend to polish them off anyway. And this goes very quickly. All done. Okay, just like that. I always like to keep the fingerboard nice and clean, so I wipe it with my clean cloth. Okay. The next thing I'll do, and this is again something that a lot of guys won't do, but I live in a dry area and I don't want the fingerboard to dry out. So I will use a little bit of a natural oil on the fingerboard, and very little. I use just enough to wipe over this fingerboard, let it sit for a moment, and then I wipe it off clean. Now I use a lemon oil type based oil, and I like to use Old English. And again, there are some other things in here that some people are like, oh, that's a terrible thing. I've never had a problem in over 40 years of doing this. I've never had a problem with this. I'll put a few drops here and there on the fingerboard, just like that. Now, the nice thing about using this Old English, I use the Old English with a little bit of stain in it. And the reason I do that is because, as you can see, it really brings out the wood. It makes it look real nice. And it also oils it a little bit, puts a little bit of oil on the fingerboard. Now I'll just rub it in just like that. I'll let it sit for just a moment. Put the cap back on. And then give it a second to sort of work its way into the wood. And then I wipe it clean, and I wipe it real well. I try to make sure I get any excess off. Okay, so that's all done. Okay, now we're going to string the guitar up, and first we need to attach the strings to the bridge area. What I like to do is I like to have all the strings attached so that the ends of them fold under the next string. And you'll see what I'm talking about. So I take the string, boy, that's hard to see. I'm going to zero in here a little bit. Okay, I take the string, I put it in through the hole. I put the end of the string under itself, and then through that loop I've just made. And I'll do that 2 or 3 times with these thin strings. I'm going to just do it twice because I don't really need to do it 3 times. And then there's a little channel, I don't know if you can see it there, in this back of this bridge. I like to have the string end up there, so I might actually have to do it a 3rd time for this one. And what happens is the little end of the string stays in that channel there. Now I don't tighten the string down quite yet. I'm going to do the next one so you can see how one will cover over the previous string. So the same thing, I'm going to grab the string, put it through the next hole, the B, and do the same thing. And I'm going to have it so that the end of the string is going to go this way toward the bass strings. I'm going to back out here so you can see what I'm talking about. So the bass strings are up on this side, or up on this side, and so I want this, the end of this string, to go underneath through the loop I just made, and then toward the bass strings, pointing that way. So when I tighten it down, it'll be underneath the next string. Okay. Let me go focus in again. Before I go any further and do the rest of these strings, let me show you how to do the other end. Okay. So here's the treble string, the E string, and I'm going to put it through this hole here. I'll put it through this little hole here. Now here's something I do differently than a lot of guys, and I think this is really the best way to string these. Nylon strings tend to stretch and stretch and stretch until, you just drive you nuts. They'll go out of tune a million times over the course of a day. So what I do is I put it through the hole and I pull it relatively tight. I'm not pulling hard on it, but I'm pulling it so that there's not a lot of slack on the string. Okay, you can hear there's almost a pitch there already. I pull it through the hole. And here we go again. I'm going to zero in so you can see exactly what's going on. I pull it through the hole. I go under the string. You can see I went underneath the string I just pulled through. And I'm not going to make a knot, but I'm going to where these two strings overlap, I'm going to slide this string through there, through the little extra that I've just made. And it'll make sort of a knot. Whoops. But what it really will do is as I tighten this string, you can see the string coming from the fingerboard and going into the hole is now overlapping over top of the string, the other end of the string that came through the back of the pin. And so I just go like that. And then as I tighten it down, it'll immediately grab itself and won't allow it to slip. That's really important, because if it doesn't slip, then that'll be one less place this string will lose tension as I'm tightening it down. So you can hear it's already tightening up. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the next string just so I can show it to you one more time. Now, I don't go twice through the hole or anything weird like that. That's a mistake. You shouldn't do that. No, I just go through the hole, as you can see. I bring the string back around the pin from the top, and I go underneath it, just like that. And then, that would be good enough, honestly, if I could keep the string up here, but what I do to keep it up there is I go back sort of close to the post and just sort of follow around, just like that. Now I've taken all the slack out of this string, so when I tighten it down, it's going to start tightening down on the string right away. But keep in mind, these are nylon strings. They're going to go at least one time. There you go. There's one time around. It's not even up to pitch yet. There we go. So it's going to start tightening up, and it's going to, since there's going to be less slack here, there'll be less slack here, and less slack over the string, it will tighten up faster and stay in tune faster than it would if I did 3 or 4 times around the post. This is just something I do. I find it a nice clean way to do this. I also tend to cut the string clean close to the post, just like that. It's not going to slip because, again, I've created essentially a string lock on it by having the string press down against itself. So it will not slip or break or do anything funny in that area. And I just cut it nice and clean, nice and close to the post, just like that. So you get a nice clean look on that side. And also down here you can see the string ends will not stick out because I've overlapped them. I'll show you what I do with the last few once I get to that point. Okay, I've just put the D string or the 4th string on, and the end of it is going towards the bass side. So it would be underneath the A string. With the A string, I'm actually winding it the other way around. I'm winding it so that the end will go now treble. And the reason I do that is so that I don't want to have any little ends sticking out the end here of the bridge, of the saddle and bridge area. So what I've done is I've got this wound around, it's twice around, and now I'm going to put it underneath the D string. That means that I can't really tune up this D string yet, because if I do, it'll be too tight to fit under here. So I just go like this and put it underneath. There we go. Just like that. Let's see. And you can see now the A string, the end of that is sticking out on the D, underneath the D string. Okay. And now I'm going to do also the low E string. And the low E string will ride underneath the A string. Now you can see I've got some things sticking out here. I'll clip all them off in a moment. Okay, I'm doing that now. If you have more nimble fingers than myself, you'll probably find this a lot easier to do. This is really the toughest part of stringing this classical guitar, is getting all this little business in here properly. But once it's done, it looks quite nice, and it really makes a difference on how it feels and looks at the end. I try to clip this nice and close. too. Okay, now I'm going to tune these up and we'll see how it looks. Okay, we're back. So the guitar is all strung up, and we've got the ends of the strings neatly tucked underneath each adjacent string down here. You can see that there's nothing sticking out from either end, no little string sticking out, and the ends of the strings are all tucked under the adjacent strings, because with the top four, these first four, we went toward the bass side. We pointed the ends of the string this way. On the bottom two, we pointed the ends this way towards the treble and fished them underneath the next string. Now, of course, keep in mind, you can't tighten the next string down until you have the previous strings end underneath it. Okay, so that's all nice and neat. So that this will not rattle. You won't have any of these ends rattling or banging against the top. You see that a lot on classical guitars. So the last thing we want to do is we want to take the string, pop it out of its groove. You don't want to necessarily have these up on full tension, but you just pop it out of its little groove on the nut. And we're going to take a pencil point, sharp one's good, and just twist it in the slot, each slot from the side, just like that. And you'll get little bits of graphite dust there. Graphite makes a great dry lubricant. And what it will do, it'll allow the string to pass through that slot without grabbing it. You won't hear a little tink-tink sound, and it'll allow it to stay in tune. The strings will stay in tune much better. It's best to do this when the strings are not at full tension. I have these up to tension, but of course this is nylon strings, and so they pop out very easily just by grabbing from both sides. And I do this on all the strings and all the string slots just to get a little bit of graphite in there, just like that. You'll leave a little bit of a mess on the nut. You can clean that off once you have all the strings in, but you can see I'm just twisting it in there and putting a little graphite in there. It's great dry lubricant. It'll keep the strings from pinching and holding in the nut. And it'll make it so that you can tune this thing quite easily and it'll stay in tune. Okay, and once they're all in, I just blow it away. You can wipe off any little bit of excess if you want. Once it's in there, because you just want the graphite really under the string and on the sides under the string. Clean it up nicely, and now this thing will stay in tune very nicely. Thanks for watching. Take care.